Welcome to Film Sesh. My name is Corey Tulaba. I am here with Albert Ghim, and today we are joined by Alex Toohey of the Sydney Kings. So, Alex, appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come chop it up with us, man.
No worries. Thank you guys for having me. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we're excited to speak with you. So, before we get started, for anybody who hasn't watched you before, isn't familiar with your film, how would you describe your game?
Yeah, I'd say I play pretty smart. I think I try and make the right decision a lot of times. Obviously, not 100% of the time, but I think pretty high IQ player that has a lot of skill and bit of size to him, and kind of knows how to be in the right position at the right times and finds a way to get it done.
We've all been, following your game for a while. Last year, we got to, actually about a year ago, almost probably to the day, we got to watch you for like a week at the Nike Hoop Summit. So, between that time a year ago and now, how would you say that your game has grown or evolved in any way?
Yeah, I think from then I was still kind of figuring out my game a little bit. But I think going into a pro environment where your role's pretty clear cut from the first day you're there, I think I've expanded to become more of a perimeter player. I think my shooting's a big area that I've kind of improved on since I was in the junior levels. So I think coming out and being able to shoot it efficiently is going to be a big thing for next season, and something that I definitely worked on since the Hoop Summit. And then I think just being able to be under control and playing at my own tempo and accepting that I'm not going to be the most athletic or the quickest, but just finding ways to put myself in the right position, use the right angles.
Let's hop into some film here and kind of break down your game and show what you can do on the court. This first clip here, I think is a good way to start it. You remember this play?
Yeah.
Take me through this one.
Yeah, well, me and Jonah, he talked to me in a timeout about trying to just play off each other, and he's going to make things happen. And he's obviously been around for ages, so he probably saw something before me and then kind of hit it to me. And I think we were obviously down at this point, so I just figured I might as well try and get on the rim. And then kind of didn't really think about what I was doing, but I knew I was going to try and hit an in and out at some point, and then just happened to bite on it. So got a clear lane, and one of my assistants was joking with me because I hadn't dunked up until that game for a while. So he said, "When are you going to dunk, man?" And then I pulled that out. I was pretty chuffed, and I made sure I gave him a look.
Alex, I remember early on, I mean, the last time we spoke, we've spoken a couple of times. We did the pod last year, and then we did the article on you early on in the season. One of the things that you talked about was, ball handling, getting to the rim, finishing, something that, one of the quotes that I put in my piece that we talked about, you were like, yeah, I mean, like sometimes I just got to go up and dunk it. And I think it was kind of an aggression piece that you were talking about, and not leaving things up to layups and stuff like that. How do you think that progression kind of went for you from early on in the season to kind of, throughout?
Yeah, it was massive. I think speaking to Coach Mahmoud, I think one of our preseason, it was like our last preseason game in a tournament we had. I had a steal at the end, and we were already down kind of 9 points, and there were a few seconds left. But I remember getting a steal, going up, take it all the way, and I go for a layup, and then one of the imports comes in and smacks the ball off the backboard, blocks me pretty bad, and then kind of from there I was like, okay, I can't get away with that stuff that I thought I could anymore. So definitely a lot of learning from there, and then just tried to flip that switch and change that mindset a little bit that I'm tall enough, I'm athletic enough to get up and dunk it sometimes. Just got to make sure I do when it happens.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like in the NBL, you kind of have to have that aggressiveness, right? I mean, if you listen to like the dialogue about the league, most people say that it's one of the most physical leagues in the world. So if you do kind of go up soft, you might get it sent into the front row, right? So like, what has it been like kind of adjusting to the physicality of playing, not so much against your own age group at all times, but like maybe you would have been doing, in college, but instead now you're doing it against guys who, have families and, have been playing basketball 10 years, 10-year careers. So what's that adjustment like?
Yeah, it's been good. I think obviously the moment I got to Sydney and started training with the guys, I knew that the strength and the professionalism is another level to what I've been used to. And I mostly just joke about with our guys the dad strength that comes with it. And Sean Bruce, one of our guys, had a kid, and after that he started to become a little bit stronger. So made fun of him for that. So it's been good. I think obviously you can see it. Like there's a lot less foul calls and people get away with a lot more here. And I think that's what's good about the league is that if you get into that early, like I did, and I played a little bit in the semi-professional league, the NBL 1, kind of get handed into that earlier on. I think that's something that helped me in comparison to maybe some of the guys that came out of high school that had just been playing against the only competition available instead of playing at that higher level from an early age. So I think that's something that I definitely had an advantage in some areas and tried to use that to the best of my abilities.
You know, Alex, recently I saw you did an interview and they asked you about, it's been about a year now or almost a year since you made the decision to not go to Gonzaga and end up going to the Sydney Kings. And you had mentioned that, like Corey talked about, right? The opportunity to play with grown men, but also you also had the distinct opportunity to play with guys like Denzel Valentine and Jonah Bolden, these guys who have NBA experience that played in the league for a good amount of time. Was wondering if you had any stories from those guys, maybe something that they kind of taught you, anything they showed you or were able to talk about with you in terms of like that next level. Even in that interview, you talked about the eventual goal for you is to get to the NBA, right? And having that opportunity to play with these guys that played in the league, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was great. I think seeing them when they signed, obviously their resume speaks for itself. And I worked out with Jonah a little bit in Irvine before the season started, so I got to see him there and got to see him grow because he was obviously coming back from some time out away from the game. But just talking to them and learning, I think the biggest thing is just people are going to be who they are, and you just got to control whoever it is. Could be another player on the team, could be a coach or anything like that. You just got to make sure that you know what you need to do and what you can do. So it's just trusting your game. I think one thing Denzel talked to me about was just when we played one-on-one, I think I beat him in one of these games. He said, man, like this was kind of in the middle where I was in a bit of a down patch in the season, and I played well in this one-on-one, and I think I beat him. And he was like, man, like you can really hoop. You just got to go out there and show it. So I think that kind of gave me some confidence that I really can play at this level. And I think just I can't be defined by what people think I should be doing because I'm young. I should be just catching and shooting, catching and passing, understanding that he saw that I could play, and I kind of just needed to realize that in myself. So I think that was a big thing, just understanding you've got to trust your game. And some people might not like it sometimes, but if you keep being who you are, eventually it's going to come through to guys. And if it doesn't, the way you play, you're just going to have to figure it out. But I think that's the big thing is just trust the game and understand who you are and what you've worked on.
And I think this is what, like you're really good at right away bringing to teams. And when you make it to that next level in the NBA, right? Like as a young player, being able to contribute off the ball and stay active and be involved and make reads like this as a cutter, I think is really, really important, especially, from wings. So what are you seeing here? When do you know that, it's the right time to attack and, get yourself in an open look?
Yeah, I think obviously cutting is kind of something we're taught from a young age in Australia. When you don't have the ball, what can you do to influence it? And I kind of saw Glove driving towards me, and we had a few of these looks in training. But I think I saw my defender Milton he hopped up in his stance for a split second, and I saw his eyes turn, and I just knew that the low man was out of the keys, so I knew it would be wide open. He just had to get there, and then just cut Glove through a good pass, which was very kind of him, and then he just finished it off.
Yeah, that chemistry with your guards, right? Like the look that you guys do almost innate to be able to communicate without saying anything. I feel like that's kind of like an underrated aspect of kind of playing off the ball, right? Like knowing almost how to telekinetically kind of read what's going on the floor. And I think, with young players, that kind of stuff is, not every player has that or that has that understanding, right? So I think that's a super important skill to just kind of innately, do that. And obviously you said that's an area of focus in Australia, whereas a lot of, I feel like it's becoming more, some something that's been highlighted that domestically in America, we want to focus more on. But that kind of ball movement and off ball movement and stuff, that's something that in Australia you guys concentrate on, even, at the youth levels.
Yeah, definitely. I think most of the time when you're kind of training in the under 10s, under 12s, those younger age group, it's a lot of kind of pass and move and try and do as much as you can without the ball. And then that's kind of where a lot of guys struggle with, I think, coming out of Australia. I think probably the best example of someone that's an ISO scorer is probably like Tyrese Proctor, but the rest of it is kind of like playing within the team, knowing how to get other guys going. But in terms of getting a bucket, obviously Tyrese has been very good at that and proven that he can do that still. But I think that's kind of guys learn later on that's what they got to figure out, is how they can actually go and get a bucket one-on-one without any action or anything like that. So I think that's where I'm trying to develop right now, is how I can use my size, get into areas where I'm effective. But I think the cutting and the passing and the team play and the IQ, that's stuff that's kind of just from how we're developed at the academy and the institute. That's the basics.
Yeah, Alex, when we saw you play at the Hoop Summit last year, I think that's kind of one of the areas where you kind of stuck out as well, right? Your movement, your activity off ball, the idea of staying engaged and being a part of the play, even if you don't have the ball in your hands. And I think at the same time, as much as as you mentioned, right, this is something that you've worked on since you were little, but something that we talked about before was that you wanted to continue to work on your off the dribble game, wanting to be a little bit more dynamic. You mentioned guys like Jason Tatum and Mikal Bridges before when we spoke, and I think just wanted to get an idea of where do you think you're at in terms of your development. Obviously the off ball stuff, the cutting, right, the acumen with that is pretty high and it's kind of built into you now at this point. But how do you feel like you're coming along with your on ball stuff?
Yeah, I feel like I'm progressing well. I think probably one of the biggest factors of that is making sure the defender is actually climbing in and seeing me as a threat on the 3-point line to actually shoot it. So I think that's where I'm working a lot of those kind of perimeter, obviously shooting and that sort of thing this off season. And then in terms of the guard play, I think it's finding that I'm obviously a bit stronger. So looking at when they back up and play back to basket, I like looking at Luka, how he knows his angles, that kind of one dribble between. Been working on that a little bit. And then the counters, obviously, I think a step back is something I'm trying to implement a lot now. And I think obviously coming back to the Kings, my role is going to grow significantly. So I'm going to have a lot more freedom with that. It's going to be helpful to try and help the team get a bucket when we need it. So I think it's just working on where I'm going to be in positions to score and how I can put myself in those positions. And I think kind of back to basket, looking for little fadeaways and trying to find mismatches is going to be a big part of that, as well as counters on the perimeter.
Yeah, because this year you also played, a bit of almost. I mean, you played a very hybrid role, but you did a lot of big man stuff too, right? And I kind of like the malleability that you have of developing this perimeter game and then being also able to, play up and be physical and be strong. And I think I think this is a really good example of ways that you can contribute off the ball again. And I mean, this is a pretty vicious screen. I think you got another one in this game too. Like, you are full on making contact, rolling hard to the rim, getting an easy bucket. So, obviously you're talking about expanding that perimeter stuff, but have you been like throughout your life, kind of because you're tall early on, have you played, a lot of like kind of big man?
Yeah, I think that's a very big part of it. I was a bit bigger when I was younger, so I naturally play the 5-man and those bigger positions when I was young, and then kind of shifted down to more of a 4 when I was kind of on the cusp of being noticed, and then got to the academy and played 4 for a little bit, and then eventually progressed down to the 3, and that's probably where I feel the most comfortable. But I feel for me that stuff is so natural to me, just setting screens, handoffs. I think that's just part of being a basketball player. So I think that's kind of ultimately when I see myself in my peak of being a basketball player, I see myself being a 3-man that if you hit the ball to me, you look at the NBA right now, I might go in a dribble handoff with someone, roll, might dribble handoff, might pop. might go break my man down, go score, catch and shoot, just catch and drive, just basically have the defender have no idea what position I'm playing with the things that I do. And I think kind of looking with the spacing of the NBA, you throw it to the wing, it's either handoff, roll, you look at the guards, guard-to-guard screens right now. So I think that's just a big thing is that, honestly, wherever I play, I can do things that the team needs. And I think at the last Hoop Summit, I was kind of just – they saw that I was tall and they're like, yeah, he can play 4, he can play 5, which I definitely can. But
Yeah.
I think that was good to kind of be able to shift down to the more of the perimeter, obviously last season, and then progressing more further in the upcoming season.
If you could speak a little bit to some of the playmaking stuff as well that you think you could potentially flash as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think growing up being a big, obviously hitting the roller and then playing out of that and understanding the short roll a bit later on, that if your point guard's good enough, it's usually going to get blitzed 9 times out of 10. So being able to be there, catch it, look at man might be cutting out of that corner. If someone steps up and there's a big in the strong side or the weak side, you hit that. And then if not, play down, back him down a little bit, look for your floaters and that sort of thing. So I think that's a part that I learned early on. And then getting into the institute and the academy, playing more of a wing and being able to come off on balls and kind of show my passing that I have as well. Being able to use on balls, which I think I didn't do very much last year. So hopefully a bit more of that this season, and show that I can pass over the top, find the roller, try and make the right read. Obviously, still got to work on that, which is something I will be doing. And then I think just being a basketball player, grabbing a rebound, kicking it ahead, all that kind of stuff that I think everyone should be able to do.
Yeah, I think that, you know, while the raw numbers maybe aren't super high, I think you've shown the ability to make, you know, some really good reads. You talked about, you know, all the options out of the short roll. I think this is, you know, a really good example of this here. So what exactly are you seeing on the floor? And obviously you have the good court awareness of where your teammates are. But what do you see on this play?
Yeah, so I see obviously set the kind of step up screen, probably roll a little bit too deep, but end up catching it with a bit of momentum and see the big man come over, and I knew that he was guarding our center on the wing, so I knew he was going to be open for a swing, or as he does here, he made the corner defender have to make a decision. So just found a way to find the advantage, and Geordie made it, which was a big bucket for us for sure.
Yeah, that's a beautiful read. And that short roll pass, you know, Albert mentioned Josh Hart. I think, you know, a guy like Bruce Brown is another guy who has been really good at it. And you have better size than both of those guys. But again, you mentioned like not putting like a limit on positions and putting a name to and kind of putting yourself in a box. So I think this kind of stuff is really important. And then you've also shown, you know, some playmaking stuff. You mentioned like in the open floor and with the ball in your hands here, great help side rejection, right? And then kind of get everybody on skates, get into the teeth of the defense, good footwork, great kick out. So yeah, take me through this play here in transition and you know what you're seeing on the floor, because you know transition, there's so much chaos going on.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pulled it actually, because this is about the only on-ball screen I remember coming off, funnily enough. So I'd like to say I'm one of one. But yeah, obviously make a play on the defensive end, just trying to get it up as fast as I can. I see Geordie, I'm not sure if he was going to slip out, which he does, but just come off, see the big step up, try and split the screen a little bit. Probably could have had a little bit more composure in the paint, but come off it and see we got a man in the corner and his guys turned his head, and obviously DJ Hoag's a tremendous shooter, so trusting to make that shot. And that's where I see myself playing, is being able to, the point guard kicks it ahead, be able to come off an on ball. If there's nothing there, swing it to the other side and then play off that. But I think that's something that just being able to push the pace, and someone can set an on ball, someone can not, just play however we can.
Yeah, this is slick, man. I mean, there's a lot of really like minute, interesting details here, like your change of pace, you know, that little like
Change of direction.
footwork in traffic. You kind of look at the wing, you got your head up to see if you have a shooter there, before ultimately, you know, kicking out to the corner. So you kind of look away to kind of get your man to kind of be late on the closeout. I mean, hey, if that's your only on-ball possession, pretty good highlight to build off of going into the next season for sure. So, you know, we've talked about, you know, we've seen your passing, we've seen kind of how you can work off ball as a cutter, and then also, you know, even setting screens. And you've mentioned like you're improving as a shooter, right? Like, and that's kind of obviously like in the modern game, no matter what league you're in, being able to shoot it effectively is such an important aspect as spacing becomes more important. So, you know, what are the kind of things that you're doing? I mean, this is a beautiful shot. What are the kind of things that you're doing when, you know, you feel like you're shooting it well mechanically?
Yeah, I think it was a big topic of conversation because obviously I started shooting the ball really well and then had a dry patch. So trying to figure out kind of what the difference was. But I think it was honestly just kind of belief and confidence in my shot. I think the mechanics of it is fine. There's no problem with how it looks, and it's just all in my head. So I think the big thing is just trusting it. I think Chris Golding, who was probably arguably the best shooter in NBL history, he had a rough start to the season in the preseason, I remember, and then he kind of took off from there. So I think just watching him and seeing how he went about it, just some are going to go in, some aren't. It's just about understanding that you're a shooter and you put in the work, which I feel I do, and just trust it, my legs underneath it, and just try and put as much backspin on the ball as I can. Get my elbow up. Feels pretty good.
You know, Alex, you mentioned the whole confidence piece, right? And, you know, even before you mentioned your conversations with like Denzel Valentine and stuff like that. But this was your first professional season, right? And as you mentioned, you did go into a bit of a shooting slump. And I think sometimes like we can say like, oh, it's as easy as being more confident. But what do you think, like, once again, as you're an actual pro now, what do you think you actually did to kind of get that confidence back? Because I feel like getting your confidence back isn't as easy as it sounds, right? Was there like a pivotal moment, a conversation or something that happened? Or did you just kind of snap your fingers and go, you know what, I'm just going to be more confident?
Yeah, I think it was a combination. Obviously, everyone was great in supporting me. I talked to Jonah Bolden a bit about it, and he says like, yeah, you know, it's just going to happen like that sometimes. He said he had a few games like that, and he did this season as well. And he just said, shooting slump's going to happen. Like, that's part of the game. It's just you can't get out of a shooting slump by not shooting. That's just not how it works. So kind of gave me the confidence that if I'm going to get out of it, it's going to have to be shooting the right shots. Obviously not shooting crazy shots, but shooting the right one. I think that's something that kind of stuck with me. And then just making sure I'm always ready. If I don't get a look for a few games, and then next game you can have 5 on the trot. So it's just about being ready and just trusting in our system, which is a big part of it.
You know, the last aspect of your offense I kind of want to get into is I think you make like winning plays, right? Like you have a strong motor. You're always on go, and you know, like you look at here, you're just outworking everybody and create, you know, an extra bucket for your team there. Even with your team being up quite a bit, like, you know, you're still trying to outwork everybody. So where's that kind of mentality come from? Have you always had it, or is that something that you've developed, you know, over the last few years?
Yeah, I think that's something that's obviously always been with me. Everyone's a competitor on the court, but I think when I was young, my brother always used to beat me in the basketball and all the games in the backyard. So something that always stuck with me is you obviously hate losing, but I think the biggest thing is just finding a reason to hate the other team and just wanting to embarrass them as much as you can. And it's by winning by as much as you can. So I think kind of no matter how much we're up, I'm always trying to get guys going and just trying to beat them as bad as I can.
I mean, this clip is also awesome because you're winning by like 100 points, but you're crashing the offensive boards, and you're also like a foot taller than this guy, and you just bully him for the layup. So that's exactly what you're talking about, Alex, right? The competitive spirit and wanting to win. But you know, to Corey's point though, Alex, like when we turn on the tape, like obviously the season that you guys had, it didn't exactly turn out the way that you guys wanted, right? I mean, you guys had struggled, went through a lot of adversity this year, injuries, all types of stuff. But as Corey mentioned, it looks like you have that dog in you, that competitive spirit, which I think is great. But also, like, I wonder, and I know we keep coming back to this, right? It was your first season as a professional, all that stuff. But did you ever feel like there were moments where, like, it was hard to keep yourself going? And like you mentioned, some of the confidence stuff kind of wavering here and there, like that. I'm most interested in how you keep yourself like mentally engaged and competitive through all the ups and downs of a long season and through all the adversity that you guys went through as a team as well.
Yeah, I think obviously we had a great kind of group around me. Obviously the guys were unreal and coaches were very supportive. But I think end of the day, like you said, it's going to come down to you as a person and what's driving you. But I think it was just kind of the opportunity that I had before, being able to play for Australia and play the NBA Academy and all these opportunities that I've been given. So I think it's just going out there and understanding that you just got to give it your all every time. And I think kind of not being satisfied with where I'm at the moment in terms of whether if I was playing bad or wasn't shooting it great, it's just understanding that there's another step to go. So just finding that to be more motivation and really making sure you're focused in trainings and pre-game and every time you're on the court, giving it 100%. But I think it's just that kind of never being satisfied and always wanting more, which I think is ultimately what it came down to. And I still feel like there's a lot to come in my game and the results from the team next year.
Let's get back into the film, but I want to switch it over to the defensive side of the ball because, one-way players, and unless you are a guy like Luka, LeBron, Steph, Trae Young, you don't play both sides of the ball. You're probably going to be riding the pine pony for most of the game. So let's break down some defensive clips because you're 6'7". How much do you weigh now? After the season's done and you've gone through a strength and conditioning program.
About 235 right now.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
35.
Yeah, that's a good frame, right? And you need that to be able to embrace that kind of physicality. You can also kind of move your feet really well, right? Like, you can slide, you play hard. So take me through this clip here, because I think you do a really good job of forcing the offensive player into a really tough, inefficient area of the floor.
Yeah, they kind of go for a handoff there and not far enough off my man to slip underneath. So obviously you have to go over and kind of make an aggressive cut over the top and then kind of stick into there. Obviously he's a bit of a non-shooter, but I know he's kind of going to try and work me down a little bit. So make sure my hands are out and keep him in front until I think he's going to slow down, hit him with a chest bump and try and stay in front, contest.
So do the Kings have kind of different rules for situations like that with ball screens or handoffs, where if you have a non-shooter, maybe you're going to go under? If you have a guy who is a really good shooter, you try to stay attached and get over. Do you have like structured rules, or is it kind of you're going to kind of feel the situation and play off of that?
Yeah, I think coach definitely trusted us with whatever decision we made, and we're most of the time we were trying to switch everything, but starts with being up into the on-ball offensive man, and I wasn't in my man enough, and the Quat, our teammate, he wasn't into his man enough, so there wasn't enough room for us to switch on contact, so you just had to get over that, and then realized there wasn't much time left, so he's probably going to ISO, so it's just sit down with your man one-on-one, make sure you got it.
Yeah, it's a really good possession, good contest. Again, you're sending him into a really inefficient, part of the floor. If he makes that shot, you kind of just got to clap it up and tell him to do it again, right?
Alex, I'll say, you said before that you don't think you're like the most athletic or whatever, but watching you play defense, man, like sometimes like your ability to flip your hips and like I know Corey's going to play some more clips of you guarding these smaller guys, but I feel like you do a really good job of staying in front, flipping your hips, staying active with your feet, using your length to kind of deter them. Is that something you work on a lot, like, you know, working on guarding these smaller guys? And because, like, as you mentioned before, right? If you're going to be a versatile guy and, you know, be able to switch on the next level in NBA, whatever, you will come up against some of these faster, smaller guards that can kind of get almost anywhere on the floor. What are some of the things that you've worked on there and are continuing to work on now?
Yeah, definitely just trying to sit down and slide your feet. I think it helps being able to play against guys like Jalen Adams that can break you down pretty easily one-on-one. So I think kind of comes with that, and just being comfortable, making yourself vulnerable in training. You might be matched up against a bigger player or a smaller player that's quicker than you, but it's just sitting down, and comes down to how bad you want it, and you just got to understand the techniques there, which I think it is for me, and then it's just you and your man one-on-one.
Yeah, 100%. You know, Albert mentioned, you know, you're really good at guarding those smaller guys as well. I mean, you know, talk about kind of a shifty, quick guard, right? Like Bryce Cotton. I mean, this is a dude who can really fill it up. So, you know, you switch here. He's got you on an island here. What are you trying to do to force him into, you know, this, you know, contested perimeter look?
Yeah, he's obviously going to try and dance his way around and hopefully settle for a three. He wasn't shooting a great at this point, so wasn't kind of the extent of being up and in that it was later in the season. But I think it was just making sure he doesn't have to step on me, but also staying close enough to be able to contest at the end. So yeah, just have a hand, try and slide with it, and then make sure you're there at the end.
Yeah, when you do guard, you know, I mean, really any perimeter player, but you know, especially guys like this, are you trying to like guard them flat? Are you trying to kind of shade them to a certain side? Like you're kind of weakening him, you know, here is that kind of your goal overall when you're guarding people, kind of make them uncomfortable and make, you know, decisions where maybe they aren't as comfortable and dictating the possession?
Yeah, typically it depends on what the scout is, and I think his step back to his left was an area we were working on, so trying to be ready for that. And then I think kind of obviously working on my body. I think coming into next season, it'll be a lot more being up and in on these guards and just try and make them dribble around me. Don't let them dance on the three-point line, because I've obviously got length to block some shots. So I think just make them try and get downhill and trust our big man on the backside. But I think, yeah, just send them one way, stay on their hip, make sure there's nothing easy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he likes to dance and, you know, play this clip here. He's gonna get you a little bit here. So, you know, what are you trying to do here? What would you maybe do differently if you can get this possession back here?
Yeah, I think I was maybe expecting an on ball, but kind of when I saw his eyes changed a little bit, he went for that first crossover. I thought it was just one-on-one. Obviously shook me pretty bad, as you can see, but I think coming into it differently, I probably, like I said before, I would have just sat on his hip and just, if he gets downhill, I think we got DJ and Jonah running back. So on that, just keep driving them down, and then on their hip, I feel like I've got good awareness and understanding their body movements when they're going to rise up to shoot it. So I think just sit on that hip and send him downhill, and then if he keeps making layups, then try and change the game plan, but make sure there's nothing easy.
Yeah, I mean, look, you said it before. When you're competitive and you're up for the fight, these things are going to happen, right? Whether it's, you know, you're going up to contest a block a dunk, or something like this where you're guarding a guy who's, you know, smaller, shiftier, whatever. I think, Alex, you know, this maybe isn't the prettiest clip but you know, I'm glad we played it, because, you know, it speaks to at least that desire that you're there, that you want it, that you're ready for the fight, you're ready for that type of competition. And I think, if anything, like Corey mentioned before, like, these types of reps will definitely prep you for whatever comes next. And the more you get them, obviously, the more you're going to, you know, improve, and the better you're going to be. So not really a question, but just wanted to say, like, I really do agree with what you said before about just accepting the challenge.
Thank you. No, it's definitely can't get much worse than that. So it's a lot of learning.
Hey, you fight. I mean, you still get a pretty
Exactly.
decent contest. I mean, you know, he creates a little bit of space. You still get a good contest there. But these are the kind of guys that, you know, in the NBA level, right, that you really don't get a break from guards, the guard play in the league. I mean, you're going to have Damian Lillard one night, you get Kyrie the next night, Trey the next night, then you're going to get Steph, like Kobe White. I mean, it's just, like guard after guard after guard after guard. So, I mean, you need to go through reps like this and figure out how to guard guys like this. Go through it, watch the clip. All right, next time maybe I got to sit on his hip a little bit more, force him into the help. So I mean, look, you learn from the possessions that are good. You learn from the possessions that are bad. You see what works, you see what doesn't work, and you meet somewhere in the middle on that. But again, we've seen so many terrific clips, and we see that competitive fire. We see what you look like when it's working. And I mean, this is a fantastic clip. Again, you're switching low in your stance,
moving the feet,
flipping
great contest at the end.
Great contest. So like that's what it worked. This is what it looks like. So take me through this clip, and what are you trying to get him to do here?
Yeah, so obviously we're trying to switch everything a lot of the times, and this was a similar situation. Counts out, he's a bit of a non-shooter, so I feel like I give him more of a gap. Saw him go middle and felt comfortable that if he went up for a floater or a fadeaway, I could contest. So got my feet ready for that, and then he happened to come back into me, and same thing. I kind of adjusted my feet and saw him pick up the ball and move his feet, so he's obviously going to shoot it, and then just try and jump and affect the shot as much as I could.
Yeah. That's a great possession. I mean, look, we watched a ton of clips to show the versatility in your game, even during that your first professional season. And as we talk through it, really excited to kind of see how you progress as a player, because you're going to work on things that are going to expand that game even more. And I think dating back to what we saw at the Hoop Summit in person last year, and the practices and the games, to seeing feel like some of the new wrinkles that you've developed just in your first year alone. I think we're really excited to watch kind of that development, not just next year, but obviously for the entirety of your career. So we'll get you out of here in a little bit, but being from Australia, playing the NBL, who are, if you had to carve out starting lineup for your all Australia team historically, who are the 5 guys making your roster?
I'd say Josh Giddey at the 1.
Size.
Patty Mills at the 2.
Okay.
Joe Ingles at the 3. Sorry, Andrew Gaze at the 3. Joe Ingles at the 4.
Tough decision at the big man spot.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 of the best as my owners, Andrew Bogut and Luke Longley. So
we'll give you a 6-man.
I'd probably say I got to say it's a tie. Andrew Bogut and Luke Longley.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alex, appreciate you sitting down with us and breaking down your film, giving us your insight into the things that you see on the floor, all the things that you've worked on this year, and what you're going to continue work on throughout the rest of your development. So appreciate you taking the time. Come chop it up with us, man.
No worries. Thank you, guys.